what in the hell is wrong with Matt Taibbi? Now look, if you're not familiar with Matt Taibbi and his new iteration of Racket News with Walter Kirn wrote that book, that Up in the Air, that book about George Clooney, with the book that became the movie about George Clooney going around and firing people. Okay, that's Walter Kirn. He's written some other stuff. He's an accomplished writer. He's written for Vanity Fair, etc. But now they have a show on HBO. Yes, they have a show on HBO. No, they have a show on YouTube that they call the Racket News. And these two old whites sitting around talking about, I've never seen anything like this. Matt Taibbi has taken a horrible stance on Gaza. Matt Taibbi, of course, who has never written anything that you didn't already know. He got most famous from the left when he wrote those articles for Rolling Stone about, he called them the vampire squid. The banking industry is the vampire squid. And that, did you know that they take advantage of us? Did you know that the banking industry is bad? Matt Taibbi is the loyal opposition in the like Bernie Sanders or AOC are loyal oppositions to the Democratic Party. Matt Taibbi is a loyal opposition to the empire. Matt Taibbi spent a lot of time as a kid. His dad spent a lot of time as a kid in Russia. His dad was on NBC News. Mike Taibbi, I think was his name. He was a reporter, I believe, for the Pentagon for a while. And then he did everything, he was a Washington insider. Matt Taibbi was a rich kid. And his partner in crime now, which it's a crime what they're doing, is Walter Kirn. I watched their show for 5 minutes yesterday. Monday, they have their show. I watched it for 5 minutes and was so pissed off that I just was like, yeah, I'm done with this. When Walter Kirn they were talking about freedom of speech and because Walter Kirn is an old man who decided to move to Montana. And by the way, this is the same Walter Kirn who went after Whitney Webb for what she was saying about J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel and all the truths she's been telling on, Limited Hangout? Or Unlimited Hangout, one of the two, what her website is. Whitney Webb has done fantastic work. And she's been on the Epstein thing. And she's not on the Epstein thing on the sex part of it. She's on the Epstein thing about how he was connected to the intelligence agency and the Mossad and who his friends were and what he was really doing with the Lolita Express. But this is the same Walter Kirn who had no point when he went after her other than defending Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Because Walter Kirn is an authoritarian and needs a strong leader type to keep the empire going because the empire has benefited him dramatically well. He's a rich white guy who chose to live in Montana. Can you imagine choosing to live in Montana in the winter? Have you ever been to Montana? Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, it's nice for about 4 months out of the year. Anyway, so they're talking about freedom of speech yesterday. And they said, and Walter Kirn said, some of this freedom of the speech, now these are writers. Matt Taibbi, of course, had the IRS, the Biden administration sent the IRS to investigate him because of his Russiagate work and some other stuff that he was doing at the time. So he has felt the government sting him and the Biden administration. So he's still pissed about it. He's still mad, Matt Taibbi is. And he lets Walter Kirn go off on these completely insane anti-free speech, anti-Muslim, but they don't say it. They are both smart enough to know they're just signaling, they're just dog whistling to their dumbass audience, who, by the way, are a lot of leftists. There's a lot, because Matt Taibbi cosplays as a leftist, like he's this independent journalist, and leftist podcasts, I think, to the detriment of society, let him come on and spew his bullshit. Now, he's not a liar. Matt Taibbi he has an agenda behind what he's saying. And it's fairly obvious that it's conservative, right-wing, pro-empire. I mean, they don't talk about Gaza. Matt Taibbi went on a podcast and said, I don't really want to talk about that. I don't have enough experience with it. You don't have enough experience with it? And I didn't hear any of the other journalists that know him call him out. I didn't hear Max Blumenthal or Mate or fucking that untalented Katie Halper. I didn't hear any of those people who hosted shows with him and know him and have relationships with him ever call him out on this. But now Walter Kirn says that freedom of speech only goes up to a point. And if there are agent provocateurs, he didn't use that word, but that's what he meant to use, from other countries coming to infiltrate this country and protest the Gaza, the genocide, and they don't talk about it. They defend Zionism. Walter Kirn defends Zionism. He was outraged that people were calling Zionists fascists. He was outraged, but didn't say it. Because he and Matt Taibbi know, and this is why you shouldn't trust them. Because he and Matt Taibbi know that that the left is listening to them. That they're building their brand online with leftist principles. Oh, that's not the right word. It's like, but they're conservatives. And they're rich. They're both wealthy. They are not middle class. They are wealthy. And they hate anything socialist. They hate anything, and they're so smart. They're so intelligent, right? Because they write for a living. And you know one thing about writers, they're all full of shit. There is not a writer in this world that you can trust. I remember David Foster Wallace talking about this, who wrote Infinite Jest, saying his editor was talking about posthumously after he passed away, how some of the stuff that he supposedly was, like he went and did this cruise ship thing. He went to and stayed on a cruise ship and then I think it was might have been the Atlantic or New York or one of those things in the 90s and early 2000s. And most of it was made up. He would pitch it as nonfiction, but most of his shit was made up because he's a fucking writer and you can't fucking trust anybody who is a writer, a stand-up comedian, an actor, a director, a producer. They live in the world of lies. So they live in a world of fiction. They have great imaginations and they live in a world of fiction, a self-created fiction. And that's Walter Kirn. So Walter Kirn is a douchebag, fucking hack. And Matt Taibbi is the same thing. I have never read a Matt Taibbi article and walked away smarter. Oh, he'll mention names. He'll do the name thing. So-and-so was head of so-and-so, and I knew so-and-so. Matt Taibbi has a relationship with Cynthia Freeland. Do you know who that is? And I believe it's Cynthia. I might be wrong about the first name. She was the economics, she was the finance whatever for Trudeau. She's the one, if you ever watch she was raised in that there's like an international group of people, and she was basically shepherded through this. She has connections to Ukraine Nazis in her family. I mean, she is a horrible fucking person. And she was running for PM and she lost because people genuinely don't like her fucking attitude or her face or the way she talks. Because she's an awful globalist piece of shit. And so but that's who Matt Taibbi has a relationship with her. Somehow they just happen to know each other. And back in the day when he was in Russia, and by the way, look up Matt Taibbi's many controversies when he was in Russia. Matt Taibbi, not the best guy in the world. Wouldn't want your daughter to date him. I don't like Matt Taibbi. I have never liked Matt Taibbi. I don't trust Matt Taibbi. I don't get anything from Matt Taibbi. And now they are actually two writers and not as much Taibbi, but Kirn. They are literally advocating that if you're not an American citizen, fuck your free speech. Fuck you, because what they're really saying is what you're protesting, I don't like what you're protesting. You're angry about something I'm not angry about. Therefore, I don't want you to protest. I don't think you should be protesting that. So therefore, you don't have any rights because you're not an American citizen. And we must hold true to the idea that if you're not an American citizen, that whole bullshit. It's perfectly okay. And this is about the Palestinian student at Columbia who was arrested because he was protesting Palestine, but he's not an American citizen. He was protesting the genocide in Gaza. When Walter Kirn and Matt Taibbi say the word genocide, next time they say it will be the first time. They're bad people. Matt Taibbi has always been a bad person. He has always railed against conspiracy theories while dabbling in conspiracy all the fucking time. I've heard Matt Taibbi say he hates conspiracy theorists, but will use conspiracy theories whenever it works to justify whatever right-wing fever dream that he's concocted in his paranoid, angry, and he is angry at the Democratic Party, angry fucking shit. And then there's Walter fucking Kirn, this old motherfucker who hasn't written anything relevant in how long? I mean, he's really never been relevant in the American zeitgeist. He was just another one of those fucking guys that came from I think he's from Minnesota. You know, they come from the Midwest and they end up living in DC for a while and in New York, and they get published in the 80s and 90s. And then when everything changed, they had to alter their path on how to make money. Same thing with Taibbi. Taibbi used to work for the Rolling Stone magazine. Now he's on Substack, and that's where he makes his money. And he's always worrying about censorship. But when somebody gets censored from protesting a genocide, they make excuses like he's not an American citizen, even though he is here on a student visa, and even though he does have all the rights of an American citizen, being that he is on a visa and he is in college. These people are scumbags, and they're journalists. One is a journalist, the other one's a fiction writer. Wouldn't you think they'd be the most free speech advocating motherfuckers that ever existed on the fucking planet Earth? But they're not. And I wonder why that is. I wonder if they have an agenda, personal or otherwise. I read their comment section, and the comment section starts to read like Jimmy Dore's comment section. A lot of old whites who are retired, who live in the suburbs, who like all of this outrage theater, have nothing else going on. They'll give them money. They'll be stupid enough to join their Patreon or their Substack or whatever, and listen to these two morons blather on about how great Trump and how great Elon Musk is and how they're breaking shit and changing things. They're not serious people. I don't consider Matt Taibbi a serious person. I never really did. He was just a journalist who had a lot of connections. Like I said, his dad was on television, for Christ's sake, in the 90s on NBC. When people actually still watch that shit. So when I'm listening to these people and I'm hearing them, they're anti-free speech, and they're talking about supporting billionaires, and they're talking about letting, like he said, like Walter Kirn did when he on his X rant against Whitney Webb. Like, oh, Whitney Webb's the expert. Whitney Webb has done more investigative journalism than Walter in the last 5 years, than Walter Kirn has done his whole fucking life. Walter Kirn is a fluff piece writer. He's the kind of writer that would go, I spent a week as a fast food restaurant server, and here's what I gleaned. Like, he's that guy. And now he's opining about shit that he should not be opining about because he doesn't do the research. He hasn't read anything or watched any videos or watched any lectures. He thinks he's smarter than everybody in the fucking room because he's a writer. Writers are don't trust writers. Don't listen to writers. Accept what they say and then move on, especially fiction writers. Nonfiction journalists, listen to journalists. Listen to journalists and take all the information you can. But certainly a has-been like Matt Taibbi and an even bigger has-been like Walter Kirk, who was never really a has-been. He just was a functional writer. He just made a living writing. And when you could really make a living writing for magazines and newspapers. So when I hear these two, they make me want to fucking puke. I hate the Racket News. I hate those two. I hate their positions on Gaza. I hate their positions on Trump and Musk. I hate their positions on the right wing. I hate everything that they say because they have an agenda, and their agenda is conservative. Their agenda is not a leftist. It is a rightist posture. Like Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore has moved to MAGA because he still keeps his bona fides. We still want health care for everybody. We still want Medicare for all. But MAGA might have a point about the COVID vaccine. Jimmy Dore, COVID damaged, right? He was vaccine damaged. That's convenient. That really must have worked. And how do you know you're vaccine damaged? How the fuck do you know? I've been vaccinated and boosted. How do you know if you're vaccine damaged? How do you know that the vaccine caused that? How do you know you don't have a cold? How the fuck do you know you don't have a flu? How do you know you don't have fucking COVID? How do you know you're vaccine damaged? They can't prove it. You can't go to a doctor and they'll say, yeah, you're vaccine damaged. It's a self-diagnosis. And if you have a doctor who you're paying enough to and you have enough fame, then the doctor will agree with you, but never, it's not really an official diagnosis. He can't go on disability because he was vaccine damaged. But that works with MAGA. MAGA is still pissed off about COVID. Matt Taibbi is still pissed about what the Democrats did to him because he was writing about how the Democratic Party, and he was reading emails, and then you have the Twitter files, which is more what this is all about. Matt Taibbi got swept up. He chose Barry Weiss to work with him on the Twitter files. But before her Zionist, we all knew she was a Zionist and piece of shit before that. Her performances on Joe Rogan, her getting a job with the New York Times as a fucking op-ed writer when she had no fucking background in it. She was given her job. She's an untalented piece of shit. Now she's just interviewing Jerry Seinfeld and railing against Zionists. She was the free speech advocate. Now she's anti-free speech if you're talking about Israel. But that's who Matt Taibbi chose to have in the Twitter file. She was a piece of shit 5 years ago, before the Palestinian, before this fucking genocide. Barry Weiss was a piece of shit. And that's how Matt Taibbi was like, yeah, let's come work with me and we'll get Elon Musk. And then he and Elon Musk were buddies and now they're not. But he still likes Elon Musk and he still likes Peter Thiel and he still likes J.D. Vance. He still likes what they're doing. He likes what they're, blah, 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 because they advocate for free speech but really don't mean it. These two are scum. They hang out with scum. And they should all be ignored and fucking hopefully these two just peter out. But they won't because you don't have to even have a big audience anymore. You have 30,000 people that pay attention to you and 1,000 give you $5 a month. Do the math. Thank you very much.